Harper never thought the worst day of her life would also be the day she finally saw her parents for who they really were. She was 31 years old, lying in a hospital bed in Denver, Colorado, an IV in her arm, fear crawling through her chest, and two 4-year-old twins at home who needed someone to hold them while their mom went under the knife. She had planned everything, asked weeks ahead, trusted the two people who were supposed to love her most. Then her phone went to voicemail, not once. 5 times, the nurse asked if there was someone else to call. Harper stared at the ceiling and felt something inside her just break, not from the surgery. From the truth she had been avoiding her whole life. Her parents had chosen a concert, over her children, over everything. But what they didn't know was this: Harper didn't fall apart on that table. She made a decision, quiet, calm, and absolutely devastating, by the time she walked out of that hospital. Everything had already changed. Before you hear what Harper did when she woke up from that surgery table, stop for 1 second. If this story is already making your blood boil, you have absolutely no idea what's coming next. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because the way Harper handled this, quietly, carefully, and completely, is something you do not want to miss. It's free. And this story, it's just getting started. My name is Harper. I'm 31 years old and I live in Denver, Colorado. From the outside, my life looks put together. 2 beautiful twins, a small but cozy apartment, a job I fought hard to keep. But behind closed doors, I was exhausted in ways I couldn't even explain. I was doing everything alone: school runs, grocery trips, bedtime stories, bill payments, all of it just me. People always said, "At least you have your parents nearby." And I'd smile. Because I wanted to believe that too. I wanted to believe they were my safety net. That was my first mistake. My parents lived 20 minutes away, 20 minutes, and somehow they were never really there. Growing up, I learned not to ask for too much. Dad was always busy. Mom always had something more important going on. But I kept telling myself that's just how they are. They love me, they're just not great at showing it. So I kept showing up for them, keep calling. Kept inviting them to the twins' birthdays, school plays, little moments that mattered. Sometimes they came. Most times they didn't. And every time they didn't, I made another excuse for them. I was so good at that. Too good, it started with pain I kept ignoring. Sharp, persistent, impossible to explain away. I finally went to the doctor on a Tuesday afternoon, thinking it was nothing serious. It wasn't nothing. My doctor sat across from me with that look, the one that tells you before the words do. She said I needed surgery, soon, not in a few months, soon. I sat in my car for 20 minutes after that appointment just staring at the steering wheel. I wasn't scared of the surgery, I was scared of what came with it. Who would watch my twins? Who would be there? That question hit harder than the diagnosis ever did. I called my mom that same evening. I didn't waste time. I explained everything: the diagnosis, the surgery timeline, what the doctor said. I told her I needed her and Dad to watch the twins while I was at the hospital. She didn't hesitate, not even a little. "Of course, Harper will be there, don't worry about anything." I actually felt relief wash over me. Real relief. I remember thinking, okay, this is what parents do. When it really matters, they show up. I wrote it in my planner, highlighting it, told my doctor I had childcare covered. Trusted her completely. I should have known better than that. The surgery was scheduled for 6 weeks out. I used every single day of those 6 weeks to prepare. I packed the twins' overnight bags, wrote out their routines, nap times, favorite snacks, which stuffed animal each one needed to sleep. I labeled everything. I sent my mom a text with all the details: their doctor's number, the school emergency contact. She replied with a thumbs up emoji. One emoji. For everything I had just sent her. I told myself it was fine. She was probably just busy. I kept preparing, kept organizing, kept telling myself that when the day came, they would show up. Parents always show up. Right the night before my surgery, I called my mom to confirm. She picked up after 4 rings. I asked if they were still coming in the morning. She said yes, but her voice sounded distracted, like I had interrupted something. I heard the TV loud in the background. I asked what time they'd arrive. She said early, don't worry. I asked again, what time exactly? She got a little annoyed, said I was overthinking it, told me to get some rest. I hung up and just sat there in the quiet of my apartment, twins already asleep, and something in my stomach just wouldn't settle. I almost called Jess that night. I wish I had. I woke up at 5 in the morning, called my mom, voicemail, called my dad, voicemail, told myself they were probably on their way. Got myself ready, kissed my sleeping twins, left a note on the kitchen table just in case. Called again from the parking lot of the hospital, voicemail again. I walked into that hospital alone, checked myself in, and sat in that waiting room staring at my phone. The nurses were kind, asked if anyone was coming to be with me. I said yes. I kept saying yes, because I couldn't bring myself to say the truth out loud. Not yet, but somewhere deep inside, I already knew. They prepped me for surgery and I still hadn't heard a word. I asked the nurse for 5 more minutes. She was kind about it, didn't push. I sat on that hospital bed in a thin gown, phone in both hands, calling over and over. Voicemail, voicemail, voicemail. I sent a text that just said, please answer. Nothing, no receipt, no callback, nothing. The anesthesiologist came in and said we needed to start soon. I put my phone down on that little hospital tray and stared at it like it might suddenly light up and fix everything. It didn't. I had never felt that kind of alone before, not even close. My emergency contact was my neighbor, Linda, sweet woman, 70 years old, bad knees, lives alone. She wasn't supposed to be the backup plan. She was just the name on a form. But Linda was the one who heard my twins crying through the wall that morning. She knocked. No adult answered. She used the spare key I had given her for emergencies and walked in to find my 4-year-old sitting on the kitchen floor, still in their pajamas, confused and scared. Linda called my phone immediately. I was already in pre-op. My phone was with a nurse. Linda left a voicemail that I wouldn't hear until hours later, and it broke me completely when I did. One of the nurses caught me trying to call out again right before they were about to wheel me in. I wasn't crying. I was past crying. I was shaking. I told her my children were home alone. I told her my parents never showed up. She stopped everything, got the charge nurse. They stood around me trying to keep me calm while I tried to explain what was happening. My blood pressure had spiked. They were worried about proceeding. I remember gripping that nurse's hand and saying, I can't go under not knowing if my babies are okay. That moment, that specific moment, is one I will never forget as long as I live. The charge nurse helped me reach Jess. She answered on the first ring. I didn't even finish explaining before she said, I'm already grabbing my keys. Jess lived 40 minutes away on a good traffic day. She made it in 25. She called Linda, got into my apartment, held my twins, got them dressed, fed them breakfast, and sent me a photo so I could see their faces before I went under. One photo. Two little faces eating toast, completely unaware of how close everything had come to falling apart. I saw that photo and finally let them take me back. I held it together just long enough. Then everything went dark, Jess found out later that same day. A mutual friend had posted a photo on Instagram the night before my parents, dressed up, smiling, standing outside the venue holding concert tickets. Front row seats. A country singer they had apparently loved for years. The show had started at 8 that night and ran past midnight. They had their phones off the entire time, not silent, off. They had known about my surgery for 6 weeks. They had confirmed just the night before, and they still went. Bought the tickets, got dressed up, drove downtown, and chose that night of all nights to be completely unreachable. I couldn't have written that if I tried. Coming out of anesthesia is disorienting on its own. Everything is heavy and slow and blurred at the edges. But the first clear thought I had wasn't about pain or the surgery or even myself. It was them, my twins. I grabbed the nearest arm, turned out to be a nurse, and I said, Where are my babies? She was calm, told me they were safe, told me a friend had them. I asked if my parents were there. She paused just a half second too long before saying no. That half second told me everything. I closed my eyes and the full weight of what had happened just settled over me like something heavy and cold. Jess was sitting next to my bed when I was fully awake. She had her phone in her hand and that look on her face, the one that means she's about to say something she really doesn't want to say. I told her just to tell me, all of it, so she did. Linda finds the twins, the frantic calls, the Instagram photo, the concert, front row, phones off. She showed me the picture. My parents laughing, completely at ease, while my children sat alone on the kitchen floor and I went under anesthesia without a single person there who loved me. I didn't cry, I just nodded slowly. And I started thinking my parents called the next morning at 9:30, casual like it was any other day. Mom's voice was light, almost cheerful. She asked how the surgery went, not we're so sorry, not are you okay? Just how did it go, like she was asking about a dentist appointment. Let her talk for a moment. She said the concert was absolutely incredible, that the artist played all their favorite songs. She laughed about something Dad said during the show. I sat there in that hospital bed, still sore, still raw, listening to her describe her perfect evening. I said nothing, just listened, and let every single word burn itself into my memory. Eventually she asked if everything had gone smoothly. I told her calmly, my twins were found alone by a 70-year-old neighbor. That I went into surgery without anyone there. That Jess had to drive 40 minutes in morning traffic to rescue my children. There was a pause, then my mom said, and I will never forget this, well, Harper, you would have been fine either way. That was it, no apology, no horror, no oh my god, I'm so sorry. Just you would have been fine. I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I said okay in the quietest voice I had, then I hung up, and I never called her again after that. That same afternoon I asked Jess to bring me a notebook. Nothing fancy, just a plain spiral notebook from the hospital gift shop, and I started writing. Every broken promise I could remember, every missed birthday, every time I called and got voicemail. Every time they said they'd come and didn't. Every time I made an excuse for them to other people. Dates, details, conversations I remembered word for word. The surgery, the concert, the Instagram photo. You would have been fine. I filled 12 pages that first day. Writing it all down in black and white made something very clear to me. This wasn't a bad week. This was a pattern. a long, deliberate, exhausting pattern. A week after surgery, I started seeing a therapist named Dr. Renee. Jess had actually been seeing her for years and made the call herself to get me an appointment. I walked in thinking I just needed to process the surgery situation. But within 20 minutes, Dr. Renee had me talking about my entire childhood. The waiting, the disappointment, the way I had learned to shrink my needs so my parents would stay comfortable. She used a word in that first session that I had never applied to myself before: neglect. Not dramatic, explosive neglect. The quiet kind. The kind that teaches you that your needs are an inconvenience. That word sat with me for days. Dr. Renee didn't tell me to call a lawyer. That was all me. I had been thinking about it since that hospital bed. My parents had borrowed money from me over the years, small amounts that added up, always with promises to pay back, never with any follow-through. I had never pushed it because I didn't want the conflict. But now, I wanted answers. I called a family law attorney named Mr. Caldwell, told him the basics. He asked if I had any documentation, texts, emails, anything in writing. I thought about my notebook. I thought about my bank statements. I told him I'd have something ready within the week. He said, good, start pulling records. I pulled 2 years of bank statements that weekend. Sat at my kitchen table after the twins went to sleep and went through every single transaction. What I found made my stomach drop. It wasn't just the loans I remembered. There were transfers I didn't recognize, small enough not to trigger immediate alarm. $50 here, $80 there. 120 once. But when I added it all up across 24 months, it was over $4,000. $4,000 quietly pulled from my account in amounts small enough to go unnoticed. I sat there with my highlighter and my calculator and felt something cold and sharp move through me. This was not an accident. I spent the next 3 days pulling everything together. Bank records, screenshots of text conversations where my parents asked for money, 2 emails where my dad specifically referenced amounts he owed me, a voicemail I had saved, I don't even know why I saved it, where my mom mentioned paying me back once things settled down. I organized it all in a folder, printed copies, digital backups, dates highlighted, amounts circled. I sent everything to Mr. Caldwell in a single email with a subject line that just said, "Here is everything." He called me back within 2 hours. His exact words were, "Harper, you have a very strong case." I exhaled for the first time in weeks. The moment Mr. Caldwell told me I had a strong case, something shifted in me. I stopped reacting and started thinking. No more answering their calls, no more explaining myself, no more giving them any information about what I was doing or how I was feeling. Complete silence, not out of anger, out of strategy. I had learned something important sitting in that hospital bed. Every time I had explained myself to my parents, every time I had expressed hurt or asked for accountability, they had used it to minimize me, to twist the story. So this time I gave them nothing to work with, nothing at all. Silence, I realized, was my most powerful move yet. 4 days into my silence, they showed up at my apartment. I saw them through the peephole, Dad with his hands in his pockets, Mom with that tight expression she gets when she's trying to look calm but isn't. They knocked 3 times. I stood on the other side of that door, twins napping in the back room, and I did not move. Mom called through the door, said she just wanted to talk, said I was being dramatic, said the twins needed their grandparents. I stood there completely still and let her talk to a closed door. After 10 minutes, they left. I exhaled, walked to my kitchen, made myself a cup of coffee, and kept going. Monday morning, I walked into my bank with every document Mr. Caldwell had reviewed. I sat across from the branch manager and laid it all out: the unauthorized transfers, the timeline, the amounts, all of it organized and clear. She looked through everything carefully, asked a few questions. Then she looked up and said this was serious enough to escalate to their fraud investigation team. She flagged every suspicious transaction going back 24 months, filed the formal complaint on the spot. I signed where I needed to sign and walked out of that bank into the cold Denver air, feeling something I hadn't felt in a very long time. In control. Completely and quietly in control. 2 weeks after I filed the complaint, my parents received an official letter from the bank's fraud investigation department. Mr. Caldwell told me about it before they even opened it. He had made sure the legal notice from his office arrived the same day. So they got 2 letters at once. One from the bank flagging unauthorized account activity, one from an attorney representing me. I wasn't there to see their faces, but Jess told me later that my mom called her, not me, Jess, completely panicked, voice shaking, asking what was happening. Jess said she calmly told her she had no idea, then hung up, and immediately texted me 3 laughing emojis. That same week I went through every single financial account I owned, bank accounts, savings. The credit card they occasionally had the number for. My Venmo, everything, changed every password, updated every security question, removed any linked accounts or contacts connected to them, called my phone carrier and added a security pin, even changed the locks on my apartment, not because they had a key but because I wanted the physical act of it, the finality. I was closing every door they had ever had access to, not just financially, emotionally too. With every password I changed, I felt the version of myself that kept waiting for them to change quietly disappear. Mr. Caldwell helped me draft the email, but the words were mine, every single one. I didn't write it in anger. I wrote it like I was explaining something simple and factual to a stranger. I listed the surgery date, the confirmed childcare agreement, the concert, the Instagram photo. Linda finds the twins, the unauthorized transfers, exact amounts, exact dates. The bank investigation is now underway. The legal representation is now in place. And at the very end, one final line. I don't need an explanation. I needed a mother. There's nothing left to say. I reread it 4 times, then I hit send. I closed my laptop and went to read my twins a bedtime story. They called 31 times that night. I know because I checked the next morning. 31 missed calls between 9 p.m. and 2 in the morning. Voicemails I didn't listen to. Texts I didn't open. At some point, Dad sent a message that just said, Harper, please. I saw the notification and put my phone face down on the nightstand. I slept better that night than I had in months. There was something deeply clarifying about it, watching the notifications pile up and feeling absolutely nothing pull me toward answering. No guilt, no anxiety, no old reflex to fix their discomfort at the cost of my own. Just quiet. Beautiful, earned, peaceful quiet. 3 weeks after I filed the complaint, Mr. Caldwell called me on a Tuesday afternoon. I was folding laundry when my phone rang. He didn't waste time. The bank's fraud investigation had concluded. Every flagged transaction had been reviewed, cross-referenced, and confirmed as unauthorized. The ruling came back fully in my favor. My parents were issued a formal repayment demand, every dollar with interest within 90 days. I sat down on my bedroom floor right there between piles of clean laundry and just breathed. $4,000 doesn't sound like a life-changing amount, but it wasn't about the money anymore. It never really was. It was about finally being believed, completely and officially believed. Within days of receiving that repayment demand, my parents started making calls. Not to me, to everyone else. My aunt in Colorado Springs, my cousin Marcus. Even my late grandmother's sister, who I hadn't spoken to in years. They told their version of events. Said I was being cold. Said I was keeping the twins away for no reason. Said the bank situation was a misunderstanding. Said I had always been too sensitive. What they didn't count on was that Jess had already reached out to a few key family members quietly, just to make sure the real story was heard first. By the time my parents started calling, most of the family already knew what had actually happened. My cousin Marcus called me directly. He had listened to my parents' version. Then he called me and listened to mine. I sent him an Instagram photo, the bank documents, Linda's voicemail that I had saved from that morning. And then, almost by accident, I found the concert ticket confirmation email still sitting in a shared family email account my mom had never removed me from. Purchased 6 days after I told her about my surgery. Front row, 2 tickets, non-refundable, bought deliberately, knowingly, with full awareness of what that night meant to me. Marcus went quiet for a long time. Then he said, Harper, I had no idea. The family conversation changed completely after that. One evening after bath time, I sat on the floor of their bedroom while they played with their blocks, just watching them, thinking about how close everything had come to going wrong that morning. What if Linda hadn't heard them? What if Jess hadn't answered? I pulled them both close and just held them for a long moment. I didn't say anything dramatic. They were 4, they didn't need a speech. But I made myself a promise in that room, that I would never teach them to shrink their needs to keep someone else comfortable, that I would show them by how I lived what it actually looks like to be someone who shows up. Every single time. I spent the weeks after everything settled just quietly noticing who was actually in my life. Jess, who drove 40 minutes without hesitation and held my kids when I couldn't. Linda, 70 years old with bad knees who heard 2 little voices and didn't think twice. Dr. Renee, who helped me see myself clearly for the first time in years. A few coworkers who had dropped off meals during my recovery without being asked. These were my people, not by blood, by choice, by action. I started investing in those relationships the way I had spent years investing in people who gave me nothing back. The difference was immediate. And it was everything. 6 weeks after the surgery, I wrote something and posted it. Not on a public platform, just my personal Facebook, friends only. I didn't name anyone. I didn't go into legal details. I just wrote about what it felt like to be on a surgery table alone, about calling and getting voicemail. About a neighbor with bad knees becoming the hero of the story. About learning the difference between family by blood and family by choice. Within 24 hours, it had been shared 47 times. My inbox was full of people saying, "This is my story too." I hadn't written it for attention. I had written it to let it go, but it clearly touched something real. It has been 4 months since that morning. My parents paid back every dollar, not because they wanted to, but because they had no other option. I haven't spoken to them since the email. Not out of bitterness, out of peace. Some doors, once you close them clearly and completely, just need to stay closed. My twins are thriving. I am healing physically, emotionally, in ways I didn't even know I needed. I look at my life now and I see something I couldn't see before that surgery. I see what's real. I see who stays. I see my own strength so clearly it almost takes my breath away. The surgery fixed what was broken inside my body. Everything that happened after fixed the rest.